So hello everyone, this is OK here, and the stream today is going to be some Crazyhouse basics through a review of some positions from the third season of the Crazyhouse League, organised over the Lichess 4545 Slack. So it's mainly among players who play long time control games every week as part of the Lichess 4545 season. And we're going into the fourth season, and the fourth season will in fact be a team league. So if you're interested, do get in touch. Okay, so we're going to just, as people join us, just start with some basics. And the positions we'll show will then illustrate some of these basic ideas. So what is Crazyhouse? So any piece you take then becomes a piece in hand, and you can drop it anywhere on the board. So that's the basic rule. You can drop pieces which check the opponent, but you can't drop pawns on the first rank, and you can't drop pawns on the 8th rank. So there are a lot of strong tactics. You have to be very aware of positional weaknesses of any holes in your position. But unlike regular chess, draws are rare because pieces keep being reintroduced to the board. So that draws can occur, but it's a perpetual middle game until one side gets the upper hand. And so yeah, I'd recommend anyone check out the cross-key Crazyhouse overview, and you can see a lot of these links on my blog, which is zhchess.blogspot.com. The first most important thing is king safety, as ZH-ero would say. And it could mean castling, but it could also just mean dropping lots of pieces around your king. As J-Killer emphasizes, it's important to develop your pieces, control key squares. Make sure no holes in your position, because holes are going to be the entry points for your opponent to be able to get a piece in your house. Anyway, I could go on, but you can read most of these basics on zhchess.blogspot.com. Or I can just scroll through it. Okay, so we're going to be looking, let's see. Yeah, actually, I noticed that the monthly Crazyhouse Arena is on now, so there may be some people joining us who are trying to find out more about Crazyhouse. Maybe they're trying a few games in the monthly arena, or they'd like to try a few games. So this will hopefully be helpful for anyone just who's new to Crazyhouse, or even who's played it for a bit and just wants a recap of basic ideas. Going back to this, okay. I think the biggest mistake among less experienced players is making moves which look good in chess, which improve your position slowly, but don't have a direct attacking purpose. It's very important to play moves which have a real threat accompanied with them. And sometimes sometimes one has to defend, but sometimes if the opponent wants to play at h3, as I was saying here, then sometimes you need to somehow defend the threat, but sometimes you just really need to counterattack. But what I mean by the slow moves are moves like rook b1 because you've got a hole on b2. So sometimes you do have to make moves like this, but often they're too slow. So yeah, initiative is more important than material. But having said that, what about material? So pawns are more valuable than in chess, because pawns can obviously be dropped on the 7th rank. So that's why people usually say, yeah, a minor piece is worth, a knight, a bishop, or a rook is worth about 2 pawns, and a queen is worth about 2 pieces. The reason the queen is worth less is because a queen, once it's on the board, can be harassed a lot by pieces dropping on the board attacking the queen. So it's a great mating piece, but it can also lose initiative. So a lot of these games, players lose a lot of time when their queen is under attack, moving the queen from side to side. In the meantime, the opponent drops all their pieces on the board. Yeah, bishops are great defenders because they can attack and defend at the same time. So it's something to be aware of. They're also good attackers, but knights have the advantage, obviously, that if you check with a knight, that the check can't be blocked. This is all just very basic ideas. But I'm going to be illustrating these ideas through the positions that I'm going to be showing you. I say here, bishops control channels of a single colour, so they can combine defence with attack. For example, bishop at a5 check can cover c7, or bishop takes a8, continues to defend g2. Pawns and bishops are known as diagonals because they penetrate an opponent's position along diagonals of a single colour. And in Crazyhouse, even more than chess, colour complexes are very important. If you have a weakness along a colour complex, then your opponent could drop pieces along that complex. And a way of telling where am I strong, where am I weak, look where your pawns are. If all your pawns are on light squares, you have to take care to defend your dark square weaknesses. And so if you want to read more about that, Google up Master Tan Visual Guide to Colour Complexes, or if you want to read this blog where the links are, check out zhchess.blogspot.com, and I'll just put that again in the Twitch chat. Yeah, unlike chess, double pawns are less of a weakness because pawn structures are more flexible. In chess, if you have a double pawn, you've got a double pawn for a long time unless you can somehow undouble it. Obviously, in Crazyhouse, you can fix weaknesses by dropping pawns yourself, and a double pawn can control quite a lot of squares. Okay, but Crazyhouse ultimately is still chess, so all the usual rules of normal chess apply, like the tactical ideas. You shouldn't hang your pieces, shouldn't block in your own pieces. You have to make your pieces active, and don't want to trap your bishop behind your light squared bishop behind e6, for example. Discovered checks are always very dangerous. Forks, pins, all these basic ideas. But there are also some new ideas, such as some mating patterns, which come up in Crazyhouse a lot more than in regular chess, especially the smothered mate. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of some of the things we're going to be talking about. But let's get to it. We're going to be reviewing some games from Season 3 of the Crazyhouse League, organised on Lichess 4545. I'm going to start with something very basic. So this is a game between Gokuba and Upgoer 5. And Gokuba, as white, had a good attack, but he played queen takes h7, and can you see the move that black played? And hi there, Juicebold in Twitch chat. I should do Crazyhouse puzzles on stream. Yes, so I'm going through a few of these positions just to illustrate basic ideas, and then the last 12 are going to be puzzles which we're going to do against the computer. I think, yeah, your puzzles will have to be for another day. They're puzzles far too difficult. I like the Mate in 29, was it? On ZH training. So that's something we should definitely do one day, the puzzles on ZH training. Today we're doing something really much simpler, just for people really new to Crazyhouse or getting better at Crazyhouse. But yeah, that's a great idea, Juicebold. So I'm sure you've seen the move black played in this position. Anyone in chat? Okay, so the lesson of this position is always beware open files and open diagonals and open rows. Well, so someone in chat can give the move for black, or is it just too easy? And you can also see it on the screen. Okay, so queen at d1. Now this may be very basic, but it's amazing how many times people miss this very basic checkmate. And so yeah, people can indeed see. That's true. But I'm not going to hide it because I think I want you to be able to. It might be useful to see the variations. I'm not quite sure how to hide it. So I think I'm just going to leave it because I think later on we'll be doing more like interactive puzzles. At the moment, I just want to be showing you a few ideas. Okay, so the idea here is the open file. It's very dangerous, and Gokuba, who is white, ignored the open file. Now here, again, another so it's black to move, very basic. You'll be seeing this in seconds. Now this time it's not an open file, but it's an open row. it's the back rank. So queen at c1, checks along the back rank, white defends, and the bishop is pinned, so this is a smothered mate. Okay, so maybe I'll speed up if this is too basic. But yeah, we were definitely going to be doing some really basic stuff to start with. And this will, in normal chess, there's a simple checkmate. Queen a8 is checkmate in normal chess. It turns out in Crazyhouse this is also checkmate in this because black has no pieces in hand. So there are certain positions where if you don't have any pieces in hand, then a check can't be blocked. Or if black had a queen in hand, then if the check were blocked with the queen, then that would enable you to get a queen in hand yourself. So you have to be aware of what the opponent has in hand. Okay, so again, a very simple back rank idea, and Hyonposhneus mated garden plant in this way. And he found the previous back rank as well in this position. Okay, so the fourth position we're going to look at is the smothered mate. And this was a game between ZH-ero as white and Mohar369. So I'm going to let chat try and solve. It's a very basic smothered mate idea. Can someone in chat see the mate without looking? Why is the engine on? Without looking at the... There isn't a way of turning that off. So there's a simple mate in 3. Just says, I see it. Okay. Can we get anyone else seeing the mate in 3? Without looking. Okay, I maybe just go quite quickly here. And okay, so this check, the pawn is pinned, so it can't be taken. And I guess this is so basic people can't be bothered to write it. So it's a lovely smothered mate idea. But for those who are new to Crazyhouse, this is a really nice idea. Whenever the king is castled, you have this potential knight at h3 or h6 check, and if the king were to move, there is a smothered mate. And the thing to always watch for in these positions is this square guarded, g1, and is f2 guarded? Because if either g1 or f2 are guarded, then it's not mate. And the other thing also to watch out for is that this is really a rook, because if this were a queen, then when the queen takes, the queen still guards f2. So you have to always, if g1 is guarded, then the rook wouldn't have to take. The other piece, say a knight, could take back on g1. Whereas if f2 is guarded, say by a queen, the other side of the board, there could be a queen over here or over here, then when you do the same mate, knight takes pawn is met by queen takes f2. So this is a very beautiful and very basic idea. Now sometimes, when you do this check, now we know that we can't do this, because otherwise it's going to be a smothered mate. So we know that white has to take this knight. Now what that means is that the white king becomes exposed, and with the pieces in hand, black is actually able to draw the white king out. So one way of doing that sometimes is you drop a knight on, let's just drop a knight here, this would be one way of doing it, and you draw the king out, and now you've got a queen in hand with which you can finish off the job. In this particular position, queen here works beautifully, and then you have a classic two diagonal mate. The two diagonal pieces are one away from the edge of the board, cover all the squares. Sometimes this square isn't defended, sometimes you might want to play this, and then it turns out here that this is checkmate. And sometimes you might want to drop your queen on g2. So you have to look at the specific position. And in this position, again, there's this particular mate. But yeah, it depends on the position. And actually, in this position, there's a much faster mate than knight at f3. It's knight at e2. King might try and go into the corner, but then you draw it out. And queen at f3 is then checkmate. So that's the follow-up to a smothered mate. So you use the threat of the smother to open up the king, and then you use your material to draw the king out and checkmate it. Now, Garden Plant rather, as black, found a very beautiful mate against Gokuba as white here, and it's the 3 knights smother. Now with the 3 knight smother, you don't actually put your knight on h3, you put your knight on f3. And the idea is, if the knight is taken, then that will open up the king and another knight will drop on h3. But if the knight isn't taken, if the king goes to h1, then you drop your second of your 3 knights on g3. And that can't be taken because rook at h2 will be checkmate. So it has to be taken with the f pawn. But now we have rook here check, and using the third of your 3 knights. Well, actually this position, interestingly, Garden Plant had 4 knights. So, but what actually happened in the game was king h1. No, actually this isn't what happened in the game. Yeah, so using your third knight, you don't need 4 knights. 3 knights is enough. You get the smothered mate. So that's a really pretty idea. This, and then smothered mate. What happened in the game is Gokuba saw that was coming, and so he took the knight. So the second knight lands on h3, and now the king is opened up at g2. So this is just drawing the king out, now bring the knight back. And okay, the queen comes in. If the king had gone back, a knight and pawn then mate. So the king comes up, and then the queen comes in, and well, even the queen wasn't necessary. You could have mated with, and bishop there is checkmate. So once you draw the king out, it's often quite easy to mate it. There are exceptions, but often quite easy. So that was quite beautiful, a 3 knight smother in this position. With 3 knights, it's possible to mate. Okay, so we've discussed so far this stream watching out open files, watching out your back rank, and the smothered mate ideas. Now, as well as open files and open back rank, you also have to watch out for diagonals. So this is a game between Upgoer 5 and Kostas VL. And Upgoer 5 played e5, which was really a blunder because it opened up this diagonal. And not only did it open up this diagonal, it also opened up the possibility for an exchange of queens. And as we'll see, that proved fatal. What he should have played in this position is at h6. He already had a pawn in hand to start a wonderful attack on h6. And although this pawn is hanging, any exchange of pieces, say knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, bishop takes, is going to be feeding white's attack, and white is attacking first. So he missed an opportunity for starting up a wonderful attack here. If, for example, pawn takes, just simply bishop takes. If pawn again, he could just sacrifice his bishop on g2, bring the king out, land a pawn on g5, and so on. Instead, he played e5, which brought the end to the game pretty quickly, because after pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, exchange of queens, I can turn the board round at this point. Can you see with there's no way of me hiding this. Can you see the mate with 2 pawns, a knight, and a queen in hand for black? can we get some interaction? Okay, it's actually is it, or is it just too easy? This is too easy to interact. Okay, so knight at h3, and it's the classic smothered mate idea, because if you take it, queen lands on h1 is checkmate, and if you don't take it, you have the smothered mate. So watch out for open diagonals, because this is yeah, when I introduce people to Crazyhouse, actually this is actually the position I tell them. Imagine you have a bishop pointing down the diagonal towards your castled king. The knight at h3 is force mate, because if you take it, that's checkmate, and if you don't take it, then I explain the smothered mate. Now, having said that, always watch out when you're doing the smothered mate that this square is not protected, this square is not protected, and that this is really a rook, because if it were a queen, the queen would end up continuing to protect f2. Okay, so that's all about smothered mates. How about minor piece mates? So there was a nice mate in this position by up go a5 as black against 0 as white. Again, a dangerous diagonal pointing at the castled king. And basically, you have to be careful of open diagonals. It's another example of an open diagonal. Up go a5 simply lands a knight on h3 and it's checkmate. So whenever you have these open diagonals or open files, it's really important to challenge them before you get into this situation. If, for example, someone checks you along an open file, sometimes you run, but often it's a good idea to block, because by blocking you're taking away control of that file. Whereas if you run, all those squares along that file are now being controlled by your opponent. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so that's some mating ideas. Now I'm going to discuss a new mating idea, which is distracting a defender. So in this position, it was a game between Jago 666 as white and 0 as black. And the threat from Jago 666 is queen at d8 checkmate. But 0 is defending with the bishop. So can you see the move that unlocks that defense? Well, I think I've got about 50 puzzles to get through, or 40 examples and 10 puzzles roughly. So I'm gonna keep moving quite rapidly. Yeah, if you guys in chat can respond, that'd be great. But maybe they're just too easy for now. So I'm gonna keep rolling. And the move is knight at d6, because if the bishop takes the knight, the defender is distracted. Queen at d8 is checkmate. Nice one, Flipper Squad, well done. And if the king runs to f8, queen at e8 is checkmate. Okay, so I call that distracting the defender. Okay, the next type of mate I want to discuss. So I'm running through lots of basic ideas here. So we discussed open files, open back rank, smothered mates, open diagonals, minor piece mates as well, and distracting the defender. Now there's something which I call the magnet mate. So this is a game between Kostas and Kostas Viel and Fahavu. And Fahavu is black and has just taken this bishop. So it's Kostas to play and mate. And he played the right first move, bishop at g6. And Fahavu went to g8. And the reason for that is because if he goes to h8, then Kostas would have landed a knight on f7 and a rook in the corner. Or there's actually another mate, rook at h7 and rook in the corner. So king g8 is definitely a better try. And Kostas didn't find the mate in this position because it's a little bit tricky. And it's something I call the magnet mate, because the magnet dislodges the king by one square to a square where you can check it, and then continue your checks, and maybe eventually mate it. So can you see how to dislodge that king? You only have a knight and 3 rooks in hand. So can anyone in chat see the... Nyangao says rook h8. That was very fast. Well done. Very nice. So rook h8. The king has to take the rook. And now we have the same mate that we discussed earlier. You either have a rook here and here, or you put a knight here, check, and a rook in the corner, checkmate. Okay, so this is a very pretty idea. Now Kostas missed that, unfortunately, and to be honest, it's quite easy to miss. It's very easy to miss these little magnet mates. He played bishop f7 check, so the game continued. It's nothing forced now. Queen f7 check, king h8. Okay, and now suddenly that king, that pesky king, there are no obvious checks. But he actually had a second opportunity to mate. In fact, this whole sequence, he was always mating. It's just finding the mate. And it's another magnet mate. So when I tell you that, so what he actually played was pawn at g6, threatening mate in 1. But the problem with that move is that there's no defense around his king. And he ended up getting mated, but that was just by a kind of accident. So we won't... I think it was a sort of embarrassing accident, how he actually ended up getting mated when he was still perfectly safe. But here he did have a nice mate. So can anyone see the magnet mate in this position? Okay, so it's dislodged the king again. Rook h7, flipper squad, well done. Check and checkmate. Okay, so that's a real nice lesson in the magnet mate for Kostas. Okay, now this was a very nice mate that Diego666 found against Kostas VL. So Diego666 was white, and the idea, it's quite hard to keep going with check. Like if you... Knight h4 might be mating as well, but it's quite hard to... The king seems to be running away. It can run here, it can run here. The problem is f4 is covered, so it's not completely clear how to continue. But the really nice idea is bishop. So one way of doing it is bishop takes f7. Now, if the king were to take this bishop, I hadn't even looked at this line, but now you really are running out of squares because you're cut off. You can't run back. This is defended, so the king is really cut off. And so you can just push the king forward. Now that's only got 2 squares left. In fact, 1 square left. 1 square left, and you have a pawn, and it's checkmate. Okay, so that shows that this bishop really does need to be taken. Now the idea in this position is we want to take that rook at some point, but with check. So the theme of this puzzle is taking with check. So that means we want to encourage the king to take this bishop. But the king could try and avoid taking that bishop. Okay, so what checks do we have? We could either go pawn at h4, that doesn't work because the bishop could just take it. Or knight at h4, pawn at h5 rather. So knight h4, okay, suppose he tries to dodge. Then we could go knight g3. And now the king runs out of squares, so actually the king has to take the bishop now. And now we can take the rook with check. Yeah, flipper squad got knight h4 to follow. Knight g3, take the rook with check, and now we've got a rook, and now the king is really kind of... I should explain, the king is sort of stranded. Actually, this is actually really beautiful. It's still got 2 squares. After this move, it's got 1 square, but it's really frustrating. You can't mate it because rook there, bishop takes rook. But it's a really beautiful finish. You go rook here, bishop takes rook. Ah, smothered, a kind of smothered mate. Just going back to the initial position, just to explain. Yeah, knight at h4 immediately would be tempting, and it's not a mistake because it is still mating. But if the king goes here, or if the king, it is still a mate, but it's just not very simple. You would need to then go bishop takes f7 and so on. If king were to take on g5, yeah, so it's apparently it's not like an all checks mate. It's saying there's a mate if you go rook takes d1. There is a mate coming, but it's nothing. It's not a beautiful forcing sequence. So bishop takes f7 is a nice forcing sequence, which we just went through. But now it turns out that there's actually an even shorter mate, which is knight at h8. And the idea is if the rook takes that knight, then you have bishop takes pawn. The rook then no longer defends this square. So bishop takes pawn check. And so the king has to come to take this bishop because this square is covered. So now pawn here check. Now the king has to come here because that's... And then pawn here is checkmate. So knight at h8 check is quite a neat little move, just using the fact that the rook can't actually budge. And the king, and that knight can never get in the way of the attack on the king, so the king has to run forward somehow. So suppose king h5. If king h5, well, we could go bishop takes. It's a very similar kind of line to what we said before. Bishop takes f7 check, and at some point we're going to be taking back. If you run forwards, if you just do this, then you're just going to get mated as before. So you have to take back with the rook, but now you get the rook with check, and now these 2 squares. Now this is actually very important. You don't take with this knight, although that would also work, because you keep that knight guarding this square. So you take with that knight. Now both those squares are covered, and you have a rook in hand. So check. And again, we can't go rook here, or we can go rook here, but then we'd have to use the fact bishop takes rook and knight here, or we go knight here straight away and rook here. But just to check, I think rook here would work just fine. Rook here is quite a pretty way of doing it. And knight f5, using the fact this square is covered. So did we leave out any variation? After knight to h8, what if king takes bishop straight away? Then knight takes pawn. It works. If the rook takes back the knight, we get a rook in hand, and we're fine. And if not, then the king is running out of squares. Well, it should run out of squares eventually. Yeah. Okay. So the idea of that was taking with check in a mating sequence. Okay, now this is a nice mate, I think, that I found against Isa chess. And it's the knight and pawn mate. So if that pawn were protected, then knight at f6 would be checkmate. It isn't protected, but what we do is we can invite the king to take that pawn, or force it to take that pawn, and then take another pawn with check. And if the king doesn't take that knight, the king runs to the only square it can run to, which is here, then pawn here is checkmate. Okay. But why can't the pawn take this knight? Well, the reason the pawn can't take the knight is because of other aspects in the position which we hadn't, which are further afield, namely these two rooks. And in fact, then queen would take the bishop, king has to go here, and we have the same knight and pawn checkmate. The knight covers these two squares, and the pawn. So this knight and pawn checkmate, the king is here, or the king is here, behind the pawn, and can't get out. Okay. Okay, next we're going to look at or queen g7. It says yes, or queen g7. Just do it the simple way. True. Okay, next we're going to look at how the queen and the knight coordinate to give checkmate. Now we're not only going to be doing mating puzzles in these games, but my philosophy when looking at Crazyhouse is to begin with the end game and work backwards. And since in Crazyhouse you don't have an end game, the end game is when you have to sit down and calculate mate. And it takes a little bit, like often you can play the middle game fairly intuitively. You have a sort of plan, or you might have a plan. But once you have to calculate mate, it's quite important to get it right sometimes. So it's interesting how to coordinate your pieces to get the mate working. So in this position, it's 0 against Jago 666, and Jago 666 found the mate. Queen at c2 check. 0 didn't play this because the problem with this is you go here, and then the king comes to f4, and then the other queen comes in, and it's all over. So 0 tried to run away, takes the bishop, and actually what happened in the game was king ran up to e2, probably hoping to run away, and Jago 666 found the very nice mate with the knight. Stops the king from running away. Now I just want you to take a moment to actually look at the coordination of the queen and the knight here. The queen and the knight are on the same color square, which means the knight covers light squares and the queen covers dark squares. This means they work together very nicely. Second thing is the queen cuts off the king along a row and along a diagonal, but that leaves these three squares here unguarded. And the knight covers two of those squares, and white's own pawn blocks off the third one. So maybe I might mark that with there. Now, what you'll notice in the queen and knight coordination is queen here and a knight here does cover a lot of squares. And the other pattern which you'll see, which I'll show in the next puzzle, is a queen here and a knight here, because that also covers off two light squares, and the queen in the meantime covering off the row, the column, the diagonal, and these two light squares. And that works very nicely, the knight here, if this square is already cut off. In this case, it's actually this, I should say this as well. This square is cut off, this square is cut off, so the knight here. It's very nice. Okay, so it's a very nice pattern to have in your memory bank, in your toolbook for Crazyhouse. So that was a very nice mate found by Jago 666. The next one is a game between Holloway as white and Hyon Potenius by, or is it Hyon Potenius as black. And it's a very short mate, but maybe not so easy to spot. Knight at b8, and if you take the knight, it makes no difference. Another knight lands on the same square. And because the queen is controlling the whole column, and just to say, this whole position arose because after being checked, so this is something to be really aware of, after being checked by this queen on the e-file, instead of blocking the check, you should always block checks, usually, the king ran. Now the problem with running is the queen now has got control of the whole column. This is a lesson where I began in the very first example I gave. You really don't want lines pointing at your king, files, back ranks, diagonals. So by running, he's given away control of all these squares. And there was actually a mate. Checkmate. And again, I just want to emphasize, look at the pattern of the knight and the queen, both on the same color square, say 3 squares apart, the knight covering these 2 light squares and the queen covering all the dark squares. So in fact, just that one square was not covered. In fact, it is covered. It's covered by the diagonal. So yeah, this is a really nice pattern actually. The knight and the queen in this formation are actually a mating combination. So again, really do have this. This is a really wonderful idea to have in mind. Knight and queen with 3 apart in this way can be mating your opponent. Okay, so that's how the knight and queen coordinate. Now, this game, again, is a mismate this time between Forhavu as white and Colwem as black. But it's quite a hard one to spot, but quite pretty. So the obvious move to do is queen at d1 check, king here, and we've got a knight and a bishop. We should have some kind of follow-up check, but the problem is the king might still run and so on. So the very beautiful move is simply bishop here. And whether the knight takes it or the pawn takes it or whatever takes it, then you do queen here check, and this is checkmate. And notice this pattern. The queen and the knight. It's a very beautiful pattern. Those 2 squares. Yeah, so in this case, we are benefiting from the fact that the white king can't run this way, can't run this way, can't run that way because that's defended, can't run that way. So there is a kind of barrier set up by white's own pieces. But still you have this nice pattern of knight and queen. And the great thing about this pattern as well is the queen actually defends the knight. So okay, so the next mating idea is diagonal mates, and this is a game between Kostas VL and Upgoer 5, and it's white to play. Is it white to play? So the mate was not found in this position, and I'm not seeing it right now at all. Okay, I'm seeing it. I'm not seeing it, but I'm seeing ideas. Okay, so with that, maybe I'll try and cover this up a second. This is quite a, maybe it's a good one. Except if I cover it up, you can't see the pieces in hand, so that's no good. Okay, so yeah, there's no way around that. No good way around that. I put it here. There we go. Okay, so let's try and solve this one. Although this is not, we will be doing solving puzzles later, but okay, so pawn, bishop, queen in hand. Okay, so I can tell you that what Kostas played in the game as white was bishop at g5 check. And that wasn't ideal. And we'll explain why it wasn't ideal. Okay, so we have a queen in hand, but we also have a queen on the board. So can we find a mate? Pawn f6. So the rook covers f6. That's the problem. Oh gosh, keep on clicking away. I can't click on the board and click on this. Oh dear. What? now if I click on the board again, this will disappear again. Queen at f8. So I don't think it does, but I can't be sure. So the kind of so this is queen at f8 or bishop at g5. So maybe it does, but the reason why I'm hesitant to say it does is, oh, maybe it does. Yeah, maybe it does. So queen at f8, and the idea is after king here, you'd go bishop at e8. Yeah, that is quite interesting. And the problem is, then the queen would take this pawn. Yeah. So what about the moment I do this, then that comes back. Okay, so queen at f8. What I'm thinking is, what if king to e6? And my idea here is to try to run here, where I have the protection of my bishops. So queen to f8, run here. Yeah, but I think that would work, because then you could go queen here, check. So my hunch is you're right. My hunch is queen f8 does work. f7 is defended by 2 pieces. Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. So we could go here and then here, but then the other queen comes in. Queen takes f7, then rook takes f7. Yeah, indeed. Okay, it's the problem is I can't get rid of these arrows without showing. Okay, so queen e4 was the move. Let's actually have a look at queen at f8, see how that does. So queen at f8 is also fine, but it's just more of a struggle. Queen e4 check, rook at e5, queen e8. Okay, so it's mating, but it's a struggle. So mate in 10 will follow. Queen e4 check is slightly better, so it's bringing your active queen on the board into the attack, and you've still got another queen in hand. So what if the king tries to run? You have a queen in hand. Just queen here will be checkmate. Okay. What if usually whenever you're in sort of this predicament, your king is being hunted, you often want to block if you can, because by blocking you're giving yourself a safe haven behind. If you were to run, all the squares are given over. By blocking, you're actually giving yourself a square to run to. Okay, that's useless because this will promote with check. But yeah, now queen at f8 and bishop here check, and it's checkmate. And again, just notice the pattern of these two diagonals. The two diagonal pieces of different colours control this whole square, and it turns out that the queen is also stopping the king from running away. If the king were to run this way, then we could do this. And again, we have two diagonals cutting off all the squares, and the queen is defending, running away like this. So it's about coordinating these diagonal pieces. I'm just curious, why does queen at f8 not work as well? Somehow the king runs up into sort of better protected areas. So pawn at e7, bishop at c8. So this would be the kind of idea. You have to sack your queen on the rook and then break through. And yeah, it's a much greater struggle, but it is mate eventually. So it's the king in the middle of the board with all the pieces. Notice in particular these two knights cut off all these squares, and it is eventually these diagonals, but the king gets further away from the edge of the board, so it's more of a struggle. Okay, but what happened in the game was bishop g5. And it turns out that that's not such a good idea, because the king can then run and the queen can't check because the square is guarded. So white is like one less piece in his attack. If he goes queen here check, that's apparently the best move. and this is about equal. Whereas if, sorry, go bishop g5. So if you were to do the natural move, which is queen e7, king c6, and the king is actually really well guarded here. The bishops cover the checking squares for the king. Black still has lots of pieces to block with, and the king will get away. Okay, so that's why bringing the queen into the attack first was the move, and a nice diagonal mate. Okay, so the next one was about has a theme of queen invasion. It's between garden planters white and 5 knights as black, and it's quite a tricky. Like, what the best move is for white in this position is quite hard to see. What garden plant played in this position was not good at all. Was pawn at f3, which does nothing to protect and nothing to attack. So nothing to you need to either defend or to attack, and pawn at f3 doesn't really cover the key squares. And in fact, yeah. So 5 knights very quickly finished the game off with takes, queen here check, and the queen is coming in. And at this point, his opponent resigned, because that would be checkmate. If the king goes this way, then rook here check, king here. Rook takes pawn, discover check, and the queen is coming to f7 with checkmate as well. And actually in this position, the best move is not to take back, it's just to dodge. So what is the best move for white in this position? Sometimes the computer just thinks, just move your king to e2, which is such a strange thing to do. But probably the best move in this position is knight at f5, threatening to take the queen with check. And if black takes the rook, as he's likely to do, the brilliant move in this position is simply to move the king to a light square, where the knight covers any checks, and there are no nice checks apart from rook at e1, which the queen can take. If the queen moves, then, yeah, I mean, the best variation here for white is pawn at e6, defends. It's something not very clear. At b7, rook d8. It's not clear really who's winning in this position. Quite hard to see. If the queen moves to f6, again, this pawn at b7 idea, and try and target the back rank. Just to give another idea, if the queen moves to d7, seems like a perfectly safe place for the queen. Doesn't work at all because of at f6. And in fact, in this position, white has mate in 10. So although the white king looks precarious, he has knight, 2 bishops, rook in hand, and that's enough for a devastating attack on the black king. The queen has relinquished control on the key f6 square. The dark squares around the king are weak, and actually black is getting mated here. So that's what makes knight here attacking the queen probably the best move in the position. But what was played was this, and black invaded with this queen, and the game was up. Okay, so that's the end of the purely mating puzzles. And we're now going to move a little bit more into the middle game and the opening phase. Okay, so this is a game between Forhavu and 5 knights. So 5 knights is black, and Forhavu is white. And 5 knights played knight at a5, because this bishop was really annoying. That move adds some coverage to f6. Sorry, c6. It threatens to exchange off that bishop, but it's not a good move because it doesn't keep the king safe, and white is able to maintain initiative. So bishop here check, blocks, takes. So this pretty much happened in the game. Takes, there's an exchange of queens, Um, knight takes b5, bishop at b6. And these are all very good moves from both players, but it's kind of pretty decent moves, but it's just too late. Maybe at this point, black should just castle. And what actually happened in the game was bishop at b6, knight here threatening checkmate. Bishop here is no good to defend the mate because white can just take that bishop. And again, you can't take back because of the threat of mate. And so in the game, Fahavu very soon found checkmate. So just winding back a second, how did he get into trouble so quickly? So firstly, not castling, not getting his king out of danger a little bit sooner. But actually it was playing this knight at a5 move to begin with and allowing white to get a lot of initiative on the black king. So what should black play in this position? Now we see how the danger of the attacks on the light squares. Well, they're two decent moves. One is knight at h4, just putting pressure on white's king side, and the other good move is actually just castle straight away. Both of them are perfectly decent moves. Actually, black probably has a slight edge in this position with either of those moves. So although this bishop is really annoying, the best thing to do is just get the heck out the way. Okay, so that's why the theme of this position is king safety. Okay, so even knight takes f3. Yeah, knight takes f3 is also good. Knight takes f3, and then white takes back, and then probably also... then there are ideas here as well. So yeah, knight takes f3 also has some ideas attached. Just castling is okay, but even bishop at d2. So yeah, black actually starts quite a nice attack. So that's a good spot. Thanks, just bought. Good move. Okay, so the second position I wanted to share about king safety was a game between Colwem and Diego666. And this is like a proviso, like you should be really careful about king safety. I would emphasize again and again, it's the first thing. But Colwem here as white was very concerned about king safety, and that's why he played, he'd started some attack, rook here check, Diego666 had just dodged the check instead of blocking it, and he was so concerned about a queen landing on d2 that he played knight at f3 guarding d2. That's no good at all because black just simply picked up the extra material instead of white taking black's rook. Now, in this position, probably if white had castled, he would still be good, still be equal, but he's given up a lot of material that he didn't have to give up. So the best move from white is actually to realize that my king actually is okay. So if I take this rook, so rook takes rook, queen at d2, the king just runs away. The king actually has a nice flight sequence. And there are no checks anyway left. Even the bishops can take back if there's a knight sack. In the meanwhile, he has 3 knights, a bishop, and a rook, and it's actually black's king who's not, which is not safe. So, yeah, queen at d2. So be very careful about king safety, but also recognize, is your king safe or not? Actually, the king here was perfectly safe. If you were worried about the king, you could have castled. He could have castled straight away and lost the rook, and that would have been slightly better. And still here, actually, white maintains an edge because he's got some initiative. But actually, simply taking the rook was the best. Okay, now we go to a game with Diego666 against ZH-ero as black. And Diego666 has just played this very annoying move, pawn to d6, really probing into black's position, putting a lot of pressure, threatening c7. And black is actually still okay, but has to recapture. on d6. If you recapture on d6, yeah, let's say it's an unclear position. If bishop takes, queen takes. Now there is a threat of knight at c7, so you have to be a little bit careful. So you can't go bishop at e7, I don't think. But bishop at b8 is perfectly decent. Okay, so white may be doing okay, but black is still very secure. But the move that ZH-ero played in the game was c5. And the theme of this position is beware holes in your position, because if you create a hole in your position in Crazyhouse, the opponent can land one piece there and then defend it with another piece and another and so on. And so it proved in the game. Knight at c7 is actually a smothered mate unless you take it. It takes back, and now you have a threat of queen at d8 checkmate. Well, we've seen actually here that if white had a knight, then knight here would be checkmate. We saw that in an earlier position. Yeah, but white doesn't have a knight. But what white does have is, so he's got this weakness on the dark squares. It turns out he can create weaknesses on the light squares as well. He cracks through these light squares, sacrificing his queen, and all the light squares are really weak. And the technique in this position I call like a yo-yo. You draw the king out along these squares, which are all undefended, and when you've done drawing the king out into the center, you then push the king back. But at this time, when you're pushing the king back, you got checkmate. Because whereas before the king was chomp, chomp, chomp taking it, when they come back, everything's defended. So you draw the king out and then push it back. So it's a yo-yo mate. You can't quite do that if black defends with a knight, because then you don't have the diagonals in hand to do that. But then you have a different checkmate. So yeah, there's no way of avoiding. If the king comes here, then queen at c6 is checkmate straight away, because the knight covers. Okay, so the theme of this position was beware holes in your position. c5 created a fatal hole, and ZH-ero paid the price. So this game was Isa chess as white against OK as black, and Isa chess made a move which in normal chess might be a little disconcerting, which is that the black bishop suddenly finds itself trapped. In Crazyhouse, this is an instantly losing move, because not only have you taken away the protection away from your king, but you've taken away protection of these two crucial squares near your king. There are many ways of responding, but the way I played it in the game was bishop takes f3. If queen takes, you're winning the queen. Takes, takes. We now have three pieces landing on the f3 square. So it's black in control of all the key squares around the black king. And the game did not last much longer. Isa chess seems to have enjoyed this g4 move because he played it as well against Kostas VL, but with a little bit more luck. Kostas VL had to play one very important move in this position, which is to take advantage of the weakness. So here h3 isn't weak because the rook guards it, but the weakness is f3. So the move that Kostas missed was bishop at g2, forking rook and knight, and you just pick up the knight, and all the light squares around white's king are very weak. What happened in the game is Kostas took the seemingly free piece, and Isa chess really reveled in this attack. It's opening up a rook into black's king. So the knight was under attack, so it took on g4, but now bishop here check, revealed check from the rook. Kostas was trying to save his knight. The knight got taken. Isa chess with quite good vision. Like, actually rook h7 is actually mating, because if king g8, knight at h6 is checkmate. So the king would have to step up, so check. If the king steps back, we have pawn here, and wherever the king goes, we have a checkmate with the knight. But if the king takes the bishop, then that is also checkmate. In fact, quite a beautiful checkmate. You just, but yeah. And if the king steps back, okay, so that was this. If the king steps back, then you have pawn here and knight here, checkmate. And if the king goes here, knight here, checkmate. So, so Issa Chess actually did have a force mate in this position, but he had also a very good vision that this rook could be given away and it wasn't lost. He still had a forced mating sequence. Queen h1 check, king here, queen there check, and then this. And the idea is wherever the king goes, here or here, we have knight here or knight here checkmate. So beware these open files. Actually, now a really important thing is if you're ever in this position, don't cede control of the file. So Kostas should have blocked. It's still mating. But the mate is a little more tricky. With 2 knights and 2 pawns in hand, drop a pawn, the bishop covers h7, so king has to drop back, and just a couple of pawns oh, this is the thing, a couple of pawns would do it, but white actually is out of pawns. But he's very lucky, he's got a knight, and that's checkmate. So thanks Rain Roll for the cheer. Okay, so that would have been a more stubborn defense, blocking with the pawn. Pawn h5, and you'd have to use the knight and just about get the mate. Whereas what happened in the game was queen just came in, and we had this very pretty mate. So, Issa Chess, beware holes in your position. G4, you got away with it this game against Kostas, but so Rainroll says, is the Crazyhouse mode harder than normal? Yeah, in some ways. So I think the most accurate thing to say is there are more possible moves, and yet the number of good moves is slightly smaller. So I think in chess there are a lot of different plans which you could attack on the king side, you could attack on the queen side. Crazyhouse is a little bit more focused. You really want an all-out attack on your opponent's king. Hell for leather from both sides. So it is definitely very tactical. It's more positional rather than strategic. Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. So position is incredibly important, but not so much strategy. You don't need to calculate your strategy 10 moves ahead or 20 moves ahead, but you do need it. You need to have a plan, but the plan is pretty simple. You're going for the opponent's king. So the strategy is fairly simple, but still the positional ideas are very important, like not creating holes. Now this is a position from Holloway as white against myself, OK, as black, and it's not about it's not about beware of holes, but it's creating the hole, creating the weakness. And Holloway missed an amazing move in this position, really stunning move to completely undermine my position. And the move is e6. There are two instincts I would have if this pawn. So you wouldn't really want to let this pawn take on f7, because otherwise that's bringing my king out to f7, and white is beginning a huge attack on my king. My king is exposed. So there are two instincts I have in this position. The first one is just take back, and when the queen takes, go pawn at f7, and to hope that white doesn't have some queen takes f7 sack. it turns out he doesn't, but he has an even better alternative, which is pawn at d7, forcing the exchange of queens. And it's not mate, but it's just deadly. Pawn could be landing here or here. Black has only pawn and queen in hand. If black does nothing, the threat is queen d7, king here, queen takes c7 checkmate. So we need something to defend. Okay, so, but it's very difficult. I suppose if you do a move like queen here, just trying to defend, yeah, then the problem is bishop a6, and you're attacking. If the pawn were to take here, we've got. I was going to go pawn at b7, but apparently there's an even stronger move, which is taking here apparently. Because if here, then pawn at b7 is apparently really strong, and if king to b8. So knight takes knight, you're picking up another knight. Okay, so I hadn't seen any of this. So queen takes c6, queen takes d8, and so on. But if bishop takes knight, which is more natural, then the problem is this, and the knight can't take back because it's pinned. Okay, so then he's picking up a rook with check, and straight away you can see this is checkmate. It's a very common pattern. Once you picked up the rook in the corner, you just need another diagonal piece, and this is checkmate. Okay, so going back to the original position. Yeah. But incidentally, if I took back, even if you couldn't take back, this structure is really bad for black. Because the bishop can never get out. But the reason it's bad is actually for the tactical reason. So then the other option in this position would be actually my preferred option, would be bishop g6. So you say, you can take me, but I'm going to take back. You renew the threat, and yeah, this now is the problem. Because the same sequence occurs if I take this pawn, takes pawn at f7, the same problem. But there's a very beautiful resource that black has, which is knight e4, blocking and then taking. Unfortunately, it's still no good because white can put pressure on this bishop, put more pressure on the bishop, and he's got now a fork of king and queen. Okay, so that was actually a really beautiful way of creating weaknesses, e6, in this position. Now just a few trivial points. Okay, don't hang pieces. This is like just because you've got all these pieces in hand doesn't mean you should just give them away. So in my game against 5 knights, I dropped a rook on c8 with check with some confidence instead of dropping it on d8, and my opponent 5 knights fortunately didn't take it. He must have thought I wouldn't do something so stupid. So yeah, there are some take free pieces sometimes. Don't leave your own pieces hanging. Another example of this was in my game as white against Fahavu. This really should be... No, sorry, Isaches was white against me, so this should be from the other way round, I think. No, it was the right way around. Yeah, this is correct. And Isaches played knight d2. Again, this is just hanging a piece, it's hanging a pawn. If knight takes bishop, you're just taking the piece back, so you're winning a piece. So just giving away a pawn, and again, somehow I didn't notice it in the game. Okay, so yeah, just like normal chess, don't hang pieces. Fairly basic stuff. Now, less basic stuff is pawn breaks. I still struggle with this myself, is when do you do a pawn break and when don't you? So in this position, black, who was Fahavu, played e5 against me, and it turned out to be a very bad move because I get the pawn to start my attack. I could, in this case, I go on g5. In some positions, you want a pawn for h6. g5, and the key point is I'm undermining the d5 square. So by playing e5, d5 is weaker, and immediately I can take advantage. You can go takes, but I'm just bringing another piece, hitting d5. And I got a very comfortable position to play. So what should black do in this position? I think the answer is stay solid. Castles, defend, maintain a solid structure. Now this is a game between ZH-ero as white and Jago 666 as black. And the move in the game was bishop here. Maybe he was hoping to exchange off this annoying knight. So actually what happened in the game was bishop here, pawn here, and suddenly there's a big problem on c2 because it's attacked by both the knight and the bishop, and the king doesn't have time to castle out of it either. So yeah, it was not very pleasant for ZH-ero as white. But he had a way of defending this this square, which was bishop at a4 check, defending that square with tempo. So after this, then he could have done something like taken the knight, and then he could have maybe developed and castled or something. But actually, there's a nice tactical idea, which is taking here. And the king can't just dodge because knight at c6 picks up the queen, so you have to take it. But then you're taking the rook. And you don't really want to take with the king, because otherwise queen will take here, which doesn't look that pleasant. So you take with the queen, queen takes rook. And then again, this is a second example of defending with tempo. So check and defending c2. So checks defending with tempo are a really nice idea. And yeah, and this brings me on to a sequence of positions on, or two more positions rather, on initiative. It's very important in Crazyhouse to maintain initiative. In this position, ZH-ero was black against me as white. I just played bishop at e5 attacking his queen, and the move he played was queen b6. So in a way, this was a fork on his queen and on the knight, because taking the knight, although it doesn't win a piece, is opening up a whole attack on the king. Queen b6 is not a good move because I get a whole attack going, and I mean the game could just continue like this. It's just got huge pressure on his dark squares, and the game doesn't last long. But what to do? Your queen is under attack. What can you do? Sometimes the gut instinct in these positions is just to sack your queen on the piece attacking it. But that's no good here, because then if queen takes bishop, pawn takes, and white gets a pawn on e5, which is a very attacking piece. So what should black have done in this position? I've got the engine showing. Rook at g6 was one nice idea. Yep. I'll turn the engine off, and you can see the ideas here. Knight at h4, rook at g6. So actually, probably the nicest idea here from black is knight at h4. And the idea is, if you take the queen, then bishop at f3. And if you're really greedy and you take the bishop as well, then there's a beautiful mate, which you'll be sort of familiar with. And that's a smothered mate because the knight covers this square. So he can't take it. What can he do? He could defend g2 like so, but then you're taking the queen. And probably white's best move is to do this. And so yeah, who's winning in this position? Probably white is still doing quite nicely in this position. Yeah, it says what? No, black is doing nicely, it says. Okay, that's all wrong. Black is better. Okay, so that was actually interesting. So what did white do wrong? What did white do wrong was taking the queen. Taking the queen turns out to be a huge mistake. So Driswold asks, what about bishop at h5? Bishop a counterattack. Yeah, very nice idea. If you attack my queen, I'm going to attack your queen. Well, I'm going to cheat and look at the Stockfish. It suggests bishop at e2, and it suggests the position is about equal at low depth. The problem is bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop is the bishop's only improved its position. If I go bishop here again, what next? f3. Yeah, it even wants to take on f3, which just looks so questionable. Like, why would you take on f3? I'm really scratching my head with this one. Like bishop takes f3. I don't get this at all. I guess white only has got one rook on his back rank, so if rook takes, the problem is their back rank issues. Knight at c1 apparently comes in if you go rook takes. So you probably go queen takes, and then rook at f5. So weird ideas, and then you could maybe pick up the bishop. Who knows? Yeah. No, maybe not. I'm not sure. No, you can't pick up the bit. So if white were to do a move like knight there, then you might go rook takes e5. But he can do moves like bishop in the way, bishop at f4, and then what do you do? Yeah, I mean it's so counterintuitive. Apparently rook takes f4, e takes f. Apparently black is still winning. How is this? Knight at d2. Yeah, okay. So really crazy stuff. Rook at f5, and it wants to just take the rook. Knight here check. Really tricky. E takes f5. Now you've got a smothered mate threat because you've got threatening queen here. Rook takes, knight here, smothered mate. And just what says rook at f5 is just to cover h5 and f5. Yeah, so it's a defensive move as well. Yeah. Yeah, very curious. So one idea is so we've seen there's knight at h4, bishop at h5 is also pretty decent. Rook at g6 is also an interesting idea. And just to show you, taking this rook would be mate. Knight h4 check. King can't go back because we have a knight and a pawn mating. Knight here check. King goes to the corner. Two knights and a pawn mate. That's a nice mate I didn't talk about. Okay, so use the. This is actually a nice pattern. You use the bishop, defended by the knight, to push the king out. And now we just need to hope the king can't come back, and we do that with the knight here. So suddenly these three squares are all defended, and the king is really in no man's land. It's only got one square left. And, oh, it wants to run this way, but it can't because of that cunning knight. And with knight to d7, that's checkmate. So Pepperloo says, I'm puzzled that white did go bishop at e2 instead of f3 with the queen still on d1. No, that is quite understandable for the reason that the queen is better placed on e2 because it's defending f2. And it's defending, if f3 ever moves, it's defending g2. So a queen on e2 is a more developed queen than a queen on d1. So if you just did this and then f3, yeah, the queen is worse positioned. So often what you'd get in these sorts of scenarios where you go bishop, bishop, queen takes bishop, often the queen from here might then go to g5 and start attacking something else. You get this sort of thing. Oh, that's true. We did have back rank issues in the other line. So f3 immediately, probably bishop takes f3 wouldn't be a good thing anymore in this position. So now bishop takes f3 would probably be a bad move because there are no back rank issues. So bishop takes f3, rook takes, probably good. Yeah, either queen or rook. Apparently he still wants to go queen takes. Interesting. Yeah. No, I have to admit I don't follow. That it's still quite. I would have thought it wanted to go rook takes. Yeah, I'm not sure. Now I'm confused. So just going through this line again. Takes, rook here. So why didn't it just do that immediately? So apparently the board is off, That's weird, because I especially set it up. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Why is it off? Oops, sorry guys. Is that better? Yeah, no one told me, sorry. Okay, I hope it wasn't like that for long. Okay. Yeah, so really interesting. So initiative is very important. When you're attacked, sometimes you attack back. And I guess the important thing in this position is if there's an attack, I think I was discussing this with Zero this morning, if there's an attack on your queen, you can often ignore it. You might attack your opponent's king or your opponent's queen. If there's an attack on your king, you probably can't ignore it. If the attack on your king is faster than your attack on your opponent's king, you have to defend first. So in that sense, this bishop move is more concerning the threat on the knight than on the queen now. Knight to h4, yeah. So knight h4, knight h4 followed by the key bishop at, yeah. With this idea. Yeah, very nice. And very hard, yeah, exactly, very hard to think, I need to attack my opponent's king. My queen's under attack, but I'm going to attack my opponent's king. So the next position, this is a game as between 5 knights as white and Fahavu as black. And we're talking about initiative and tempo, and it was a wonderful illustration of kind of the moves people make that might waste time. So bishop here, check, exchange, exchange, bishop blocks. You have to really think ahead a couple of moves. If I exchange, exchange, especially if your queen is going to be out in the open, then queen goes back, and you just wasted a move doing that. So Pepperless says, I still don't have the level to come up with a move like knight to h4. I can think I have to attack, but I cannot see the whole sequence. And Nyangao says, yeah, now I also see why you say it's so important to start from the endgame in Crazyhouse. Hi there, Clara Cottontail. And Juswell says, yeah, knight to h4 does not seem like it's enough. It's just one piece, a lone piece in the attack, and yet somehow. So this is a good example of, like, it felt like you feel like checking your opponent's a good idea, you're attacking, but it's actually, you're wasting a move, because then you have to move the queen back again, and you just wasted a move, and now black, this is actually what happened in the game, took the bishop, and this pin is a huge problem. You can't take back with check. You're dying to take back with check, but you can't. Takes, now you can take back with check, and black, who was Fahavu in this case, blocked with check. This was really very, very nice play. So from Fahavu, 5 knights made just one little error in a way of losing a tempo, and Fahavu played really incredibly to counterattack, takes, check, but again blocks with the counterattack. So this is a beautiful example of an initiative, keeping initiative, attacking the queen, but also secretly attacking h3, which he then took. Now he's got a nice fork on the king and queen. This is a beautiful game from Fahavu, and really nothing that 5 knights could really do. He took the rook, and then he was shortly after mated. Hi there, White Dancing Rockstar. And just bold, yeah, my term for endgame is the mating sequence at the end. And hi there, Guy in Box. Bishop at f1. Yeah, bishop at f1's a nice move. It wasn't necessarily the best move according to Stockfish, but it was a very beautiful move, hitting both the queen and h3. And just really beautiful finish from Fahavu. So real props to Fahavu for that. And so what should white have done instead of bishop h5? I think the thing to recognize in this position is there's a very dangerous diagonal on the king. And so the best move for white in this position is actually just simply moving the king out of the way. And if black takes the bishop, you take back, and actually you're opening up your own file on the opponent's king. So White Dancing Rockstar says, Crazyhouse is amazing, and Clara says, I'm trying to learn it. And Pepperly says, always sack the queen, at least don't retreat it. Yeah, usually that's true. So yeah. So we saw the danger of these pins, the files, and very basic example of the pin. Mohar 369 as white against ZH-ero, found the move bishop b5, pinning the queen to the king, and just a couple of moves later, I think ZH-ero threw in the towel in this position. So yeah, you have to watch out for pins, just like in normal chess. And the other thing you have to watch out for are forks. So you should always have an eye. What pieces can be forked in this position? And this should jump out at you, but black might have felt, the knight covers the fork, no worries. But of course, bishop takes c6, takes back, and then the fork comes live. So watch out for forks, and watch out for the pieces that can be taken to make the fork real. So now, where's the fork in this position? So now it's black to move. It's beware the threatened fork. Bishop takes knight, takes back, and that will be a fork against me. So you have to be wary. What actually happened in the game was pawn at e2, and what Garden Plant should have played as white has actually just gone for the fork straight away. But what he did was equally good, and this would have been. So there's actually a very key move actually in this sequence, which is so you get the fork. You can't take the queen. That's actually quite important here. If you take the queen with the rook and queen, you're getting mated. So why is that? Because rook here, check. If you run, queen here will be checkmate. So you have to block. So you could take. Okay, so it's not so I just see here it's a mate in 9. But the point is you are getting mated if you take the queen. So you'd have to take the rook, and then you try and defend any mates. But yeah, and then the really threatening move, white is relatively safe apart from this one move, rook at c1. But he has a very nice resource, just moving the knight back. And that just saves him one move. Okay, sure, at some point white can break through, black could break through on this back rank, but just with this one move, now white's attack is faster. He still has a queen in hand. He's going to be breaking through on black's back rank faster. So actually what happened in the game was, after this, queen takes e2, rook at c1. So this is the idea that that Gokuba had as black, but now bishop takes c6. Garden Plant found this nice combination and won this game against Gokuba. So yeah, always watch out for the forks, and watch out for your opponent's forks, and defend against them. So can we see a fork here? This is Garden Plant as white against ZH-ero as black. Can we see a fork? So Garden Plant did find a fork here, but it's not a knight fork, it's a rook fork. Rook check, blocks, and then he took the knight. But actually, he took with the rook, but he should have actually taken with the bishop, because that's an even stronger move, because now we have a second fork of queen and knight. And although the knight is protected, it is a fork because when you take back, you have a huge attack on the black king. But he'd won enough material to win the game, to go on to win the game. So okay, so always watch out for forks. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the themes and approaching the puzzles, but just a few more themes left. And the first one is to take or not to take. So our opponent has just found a fork on a king and queen. Do we try and pick up some material, at least get a knight for our queen? That's the decision we have to make. And the lesson is we shouldn't. We should just go king g8. He could take our queen, but we take back, and actually the king is quite safe. He has to do some kind of back rank attack, but we've got a rook and another rook which we can put on the back rank. This is actually safe for black. We're going to lose the queen anyway, but if we take, we could get 2 knights for our queen here. When it takes here, it takes here. So the reason this is bad, it's being too materialistic, and it turns out this weakness. So if this weakness on f7 were covered, say there was a bishop covering it or something, then you should take. Just pick up all the material you can get. But in this position, this weakness on f7 is critical. Notice he doesn't take the queen immediately, he takes the queen with check. And white actually has mate and 6 in this position by going bishop at e6 check. Very nice move. If the king drops back, mate queen at f7 is checkmate. If the king goes here, you have queen here, and a very subtle move. If the queen tries to go here, the knight covers. But queen here, notice all the squares along this diagonal aren't protected, so the queen can just tromp up any blockers, and it's checkmate. So that's if the king tries to run that way. If it takes the bishop, the other queen comes in, and we can take it, but then it opens up this file. And so the king no longer has a safe square to run back to. So it's a very pretty mate. Queen here takes queen. Quite hard to see, actually. Stockfish is pretty reliable in this variant. It's just now there are really complicated positions where it will say 0-0, where one side really is winning. Yeah, once it finds an advantage for one side, like it doesn't usually switch from +20 to -20, but it does it can sometimes, but it does sometimes switch from 0-0-ish to one side's got checkmate. Having said that, it can misunderstand certain complex positions. Okay, so to take or not to take, that was a really important example. And then the other thing, this is a game, Colwyn as white against myself as black. It's about blocking with the right pieces. So if the king were to move, it gets checkmated. So if the king were to move, rook at e1 is checkmate. So it's very important to block. That's the first thing. What actually happened in the game was Colwyn blocked with a pawn. And that was fatal because wherever the king moves, rook at e1 is the standard hook mate in regular chess. A knight and a rook checkmate with the knight defended because the pawn stops the king from running out. But there was a move that he had in this position. It turns out I was still okay as black, but suddenly if you do this, if the king runs up, knight here, rook here, the bishop is guarding e1. So I can go here, check. Taking the bishop, it turns out, is fatal. But he could step up, bishop here, check, then take the bishop. Oh, maybe taking the bishop's not fatal. Yeah, taking the bishop is fatal because I can land a knight, apparently, on c4 and bad things happen. Bishop at b2, I mean, I hadn't seen this. Bishop at b2, king here, I have a rook, see king b5, and the king can't run back. No, it can't really run back, so a6, he's got 2 squares, But why can't he just... Okay, obviously if he goes there, he gets checked. But why can't he go here? Oh, because then... Okay, you don't go a6, you go at a6. That's the key. At a6, king here, and then knight here. Knight c6, king a4, b5. Okay, so that's what happens if the king tries to run up. What if the king tries to run back? No, that doesn't work as well, because we get mated along the back rank. And if the king tries to run this way, same kind of problems happen. Rook here, check, king here, rook here, check, king here. Yeah, at a6, and this is coming in. b5 is coming in. King c5, knight d7, king takes c4, b5, checkmate. Okay, so all kinds of nasty mates if you take, but it turns out you can dodge it and then take, and then there isn't apparently a checkmate. If knight at c4, you run. If rook here, check, you just block. And the point is black's already used up the bishop that he used before when the king was on c3. So actually, so black is still winning in this position, but he has to watch out because there's queen at d8 checkmate threat. Yeah, Pepperly says bishop at b2 is so nice to enter with the rook on the dark squares. Indeed. So there's nothing concrete for black, and in fact he just has to play a move like knight c6 or knight d7 to continue. But since there is nothing concrete, he probably should have just played knight d7 in this position. So black is supposed to be winning this just because the white king isn't very safe. And white has two queens, but that's all in hand. And that's a lesson, like queens are great, but if they don't have other pieces to accompany them. Yeah, it's still minus 27. But someone who's new to Crazyhouse, and like even myself, I was quite shocked this is minus 27 when white's got two queens in hand. But the point is, and I'll show you why, black lands a queen, threatening some kind of checkmate. Queen here, rook takes, queen takes, checkmate. What does black do? Simply harasses that queen. What can white actually do with queens and no other pieces? The queens just get harassed. Yeah, so this is just giving black a chance to go wrong. And yeah, it's just incredibly hard. Queen takes e4, it says here, but just black has a knight, just picks up the queen. So those queens in white's hand are actually going to end up in black's hand before long. So there we go. So just a few more themes left. Develop pieces. So this is a game between Fahavu as white, and I'd just taken on d2, and he took back with the knight, which isn't terrible, but he really should have taken back with the other knight. It develops his rook, could even in the future maybe even castle. It's just bringing another knight closer to the center of the board. And actually, he was probably winning in this position. So the way the game continued was he took with the knight already active, and I landed a pawn here, takes, and then this sort of thing ensued. Queen takes c5, knight. So I sacked the queen to get a check and then take that piece. So getting two pieces for the queen. So as we said at the beginning, queen is worth about two pieces. He gets a check, which is looking like it's trying to pick up one of my pieces, but I can actually defend while defending that piece. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e2. So yeah, so let's say this position is a slight. I said this is a slight advantage for black, but it's yeah, and then the game continues like so. But the knight's just to defend these two squares. Anyway, and the game continues, but and there's a nice checkmate with two diagonal pieces, like I said. Get a checkmate in the corner. So I sacrificed the knight, but okay. So, but my point is, white would have been much better off if just in the opening he had taken back with the other knight. Now imagine if I'd done the same move at e3. Then you could go knight takes here. If he takes this knight, he can take back with the knight. So he probably takes the pawn because that's more annoying, because I have to take back with the king. So these games were played 10 plus 10. To Nyangao, who was asking. And Pepperly says, surprisingly, development is good in Crazyhouse too. At d3 check, takes. Yeah, so if you're interested in joining, it's organized on the Lichess 4545 Slack. So check. So yeah, we're trying. So this looks actually quite threatening from black because the king is getting really exposed. Bishop here, check. But the point is, black only has a queen in hand, and actually white is perfectly safe. So this is how it could have turned out if I'd gone all out in attack. I don't quite have enough to attack, and basically white's pieces are developed, and they are defending the white king. Yeah, Jusball says it's quite rare to see high-level Crazyhouse games played at more than 3 minutes. That's very true. 3 plus 2 is the standard, and same for the Crazyhouse World Championship. So this is very much a league for people who are less experienced in Crazyhouse and who want to play Crazyhouse at a slower pace and who are getting better. And the purpose of this video is to help especially people in the league improve, and also other people who play Crazy. I noticed the monthly arena is happening right now. So if anyone's joining this, we still got another 1.5 hours to go over that. So maybe people might want to be watching this stream and yeah, might want to try some Crazyhouse, want to play some games in the monthly arena, and this is just trying to give them some sort of insight into some of the basic ideas. So we just got a few more basic ideas to go through. An opening trap from Diego666 against Colwem. He got the beginning of the trap but didn't execute it completely correctly. So he takes on f7, so always watch out for sacrifices on f7 or sacrifices on pawns near your king. Takes here, and in this position he played knight d5. But the move, and the game continued like this. But the move he wanted in this position is queen takes bishop, because the bishop is protecting e6, and if you take back, we have check. We take the queen. Sometimes you want to go pawn here check and then take the queen with check, but actually taking the queen directly is better because now there's a threat of bishop here check picking up the knight. So this is why black takes with the knight, because that covers this important square. Still, you can check on the back rank, and now this is very nice because black can't take this bishop, because if you take this bishop, pawn here is checkmate. So he has to block, and then you exchange queens just so you don't lose the queen, and then you take the knight. Okay, so at the end of all that, we've lost our queen, but we've won a lot of material. Have we won a lot of material? No. White is only a pawn up. So okay, so we've only won a pawn, but we have a really nice king. Bishop guarding all the important squares around our king. Solid structure. Look at black's king. Yeah, it's okay. It's got a couple of bishops around it. But we've got this bishop's also... This is actually a good example of bishop being both a defensive piece and an attacking piece. We're threatening pawn at e6 coming, but we're also defending. So this is a very nice, comfortable position. Nyangao says, I watched some of the World Crazyhouse Championship. Very entertaining with commentary. That's wonderful. Yeah, and I'll just put the link to my YouTube. If you look at the playlists, you can see all kinds of stuff there. So instructional Crazyhouse stuff, Crazyhouse World Championship commentary, about 90 plus videos of Crazyhouse World Championship commentary from myself and others. Lots of good stuff. A few puzzle videos and instructional videos and so on. Okay, so what actually happened in the game was knight d5. I said that was not such a good move. And then because this bishop is then defended, you can't then do any sacrifice now. So at f3, and then black played h6, which has kind of weakened the light squares around the king. So that was not ideal. So what should black have done? Probably black should have taken knight takes d5, takes the bishop, and this sort of sequence. Maybe black is slightly better. But instead he went for h6, and now takes, and black gets a knight in hand. King to g8. He takes the bishop then, and so he's threatening bishop at f7 checkmate. So it's very important to take that knight. So f7 is bishop at d5 check, king ran away, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and knight takes the rook. And the game continued a little bit, but Jaego 666 was in control. So he won the game in any case, and it shows quite nice manner in which he won it. But it would have been queen takes g4 was the move he missed. Okay, so now the next game is between myself as white and Jaego 666 as black. In fact, the next two games, and I'm going to just play through the games. But this game is a very good illustration of the importance of color complexes. So bishop b4, bishop b5 check, blocks the check, just developing my knight, protecting c3, castles, c6. Now c6, Stockfish actually likes c6, but it does weaken the dark squares, and they become a target. Knight e4, takes, knight at c7 check. King f8, so I pick up the rook. So white's got a slight edge, a slight control of the dark squares, but what white lacks is a pawn to attack with. And so this is why I played f3, just to try and pick up a pawn to launch an attack. And pawn allows me to get in on the back rank. Okay, so this is why it does illustrate the color complexes. Where are white's pawns? Where are black's pawns rather? They're on light squares. So where am I attacking as white? I'm attacking obviously on the dark squares, which are less protected. And this move is then to try and kick away this bishop, which is protecting the dark squares, but it's also got a double motive, is I'm trying to incite an exchange for the bishop with the knight. Because if I've got a bishop in hand, that's exactly what I need to continue my attack along the dark squares. So the bishop drops back, I attack it again, and I'm really just chasing this bishop to be able to continue an attack on the dark squares, and then just simply takes the pawn, brings the king out, okay, and I'm going to continue an attack on the dark squares. If he takes, is actually getting mated. Takes, that's a discovered check. If he takes here, it's just checkmate in 1, and if he drops back, then it's a mate in 2. And if he does the other move, which is this, then it's also a mate in 2. So this is just a very good illustration, I think, of attacking along the dark squares. About that, so yeah, and that was the game. But about the f3 move, I don't think Stockfish likes f3, but I'm just explaining. I mean, yeah, comes in as fifth best move. So what did it want me to do? Rook at c7, but that was the. I think it worked. So it worked out well. And I think the reason it doesn't like it is instead of this, it wanted to do something like bishop here. But I still think this is probably good for white. Okay, so that was quite a clean game illustrating color complexes. But now the last game I want to look at before we go into the puzzles is my second game against Jaego 666, who actually beat me in season 2. So we drew 1-1 that season. and he's a very good player. He's only rated 1700 in the 1700s, but to be honest, in season 2, both the games I was playing against him, I was losing, and I just managed to win 1 out of 2. So this season I managed to win both, but this particular game I was very lucky to win. So in this game I'm actually black, and we both missed a whole series of, we both missed quite a few mates in this game. So I thought it might be quite a good illustration of a few things. So bishop takes c6. Maybe this wasn't such a bright idea because this is quite a good bishop. It's covering the light squares around in white's position, like we were just saying in the last game. The pawns are on dark squares. The light squares are weak, so when Jago 666 swaps off his light squared bishop, maybe that's not the best move. And again, f3. This is creating severe weakness around the black king. And again, that's not, well, sometimes f3 is good, but only maybe when the king is more secure. It feels like the king is a little bit insecure here. And actually, white did have a really amazing move in this position, which is e6. Which is very counterintuitive. Why would you do e6? Black can just take, and the next move just put a pawn back on f7, covering all the weaknesses. White's got no pawns in hand to attack f7. Okay, so you can go knight to e5, but I could still go pawn at f7 if I wanted to, in theory. But then knight takes f7 apparently, and we have a second knight in hand. So, so partly it's because f7 is a weakness, even though we don't have a pawn yet in hand to exploit it. But partly it's because this bishop is really trapped. It's going to take 2 moves to get it out, so it's all about tempo. Yeah, you just take it, absolutely. But okay, so the other move you can do is bishop at g6. Yeah. But apparently this is also pretty decent. So takes, and again knight at e5. So yeah, this is actually would have been a really nice sequence for white. Just really awkward to play. It's not sort of, it's nothing direct and concrete. It's just very awkward. Okay, so f3 makes life a bit easier for black. I pushed e6 myself. That's why it's so important to develop quickly and not get caught out by that e6 move. Knight at a5. Okay, I mean Stockfish recommends knight e2, but then there's still bishop at g5, and the dark squares are really weak along here, and the light squares are also potentially weak. I guess f3 is trying to cover the light squares a bit, but there's so many weaknesses. Queen h5 might be a threat. Yeah, the queen h5 is also a threat in some positions as well. Queen h4 rather, yeah. So he did this, and I did bishop at b2, which Stockfish didn't like at all. And yeah, queen h4 is what Stockfish really liked. The idea being stuff like this. So if you take my queen, I take your queen with check. But you can't take my bishop because it's pinned. So you probably just want to move your queen out the way and renew the threat on my queen. But then I've got bishop takes g3, which you can take for sure. But then I'm winning there's an exchange of queens, and it's my move first. Takes. And in this position, you could take the rook, but Stockfish even just wants to just go for this, saying that if you dare to take my queen, this attack is stronger. Basically, the black king is kind of safe. Oh, queen h5 is in an earlier position. Oh yes, knight at d5, queen h5 ideas to attack the black king. That's true. After e6, f takes e6, knight e5. Yeah, queen h5 is something coming up as well in this position. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, this is also a threat, as well as this knight coming in here. Definitely the only thing when you could bring your queen out is to have an eye for does the opponent have a bishop in hand, for example, to kick your queen back. That's the only thing to be wary of. Okay, so rook b1, bishop takes c3. Again, Stockfish really likes just queen h4, but kind of sacrifice the bishop just to try and keep some initiative at b4. And here probably white should just get out the way, but he kind of falls into the exchange. Takes, attacking the queen. Yeah, so in this position, actually black had a really nice move, which is rook at b5. Because if the queen drops back, you've then got bishop at b4. So a really beautiful move. I missed. I'd just go bishop at e7. At c5, that's clearly a mistake, because white only has one pawn in hand. And pawns are, I call pawns the sparks to initiate an attack on the opponent. They're the sparks that light up an attack, that light the matches for an attack, and you don't want to waste them. That pawn is never going to be useful in the future on that square. Now, of course, you need pawns sometimes to defend your king, but you don't need pawns to defend your queen. A queen can look after itself. So pawn at c5 is definitely a mistake. Queen should just back off. This is not an important diagonal either to block off. Wasted pawn indeed, says Pepperloo. So I was very pleased as black to see that. Rook at b5, queen backs off. Rook b1 check, king f2. And bishop b5. Probably the best move for white here was bishop d1, just blocking off. I think we said this many times in these positions. If someone checks you or tries to take over your back rank or take over a file, almost always you want to block. Because if you move, you give away all these squares to your opponent. So it's almost always a mistake. And it did prove to be a mistake here. Bishop b5, so I'm threatening rook here check. And he pinned the bishop, but that doesn't stop the check. So I could have gone straight away with the check, but I just did this first and then did the check. Now, having said that, after bishop at b5, he didn't have to go queen a3. He could have gone knight e2, defending this. This is a very nice defense, because there are three options for black. So either check and then you block it, or you take the free rook, but then you lose your bishop, or you take the free queen, but then you lose your rook. So in light of all that, knight e2 is a really interesting move. It either deflects the rook from protecting the bishop, or it hangs the rook. So it's a really good defensive move, and it's challenging all these squares. It's saying, no, you can't have control of my back rank. But instead he did the very natural, just moving the queen back, and allowed this rook f1 check. And unfortunately I failed to convert. So if king g3, you can even just take this knight, and white can't take back because bishop h4 check brings the king further out, queen g5 check brings the king to here, and knight at f2, say, is checkmate. So that knight is going to be mating. That's enough to mate that knight, so it can't take it back. But if you go here, there's actually a completely forcing mate, which I really should have seen, using the fact that we have two diagonals. If I move the bishop to here, if he has no blockers, that's checkmate. So he has to block. If he blocks with the bishop, takes. If he blocks with the bishop, takes. Queen h4 check, just blocking off all the squares. He could block and then use a bishop to checkmate. And just notice bishop. Well, in fact, this bishop is not needed right now, but yeah. And if he blocks with the knight, then there's also a mate, just takes, and knight here. And again, if the king goes back, he is running into bishop here, checkmate. Or queen here, checkmate. Yeah, because I don't have a bishop. That's true. And if he runs the other way, queen here is checkmate straight away. So really nice checkmate that I was kind of planning on. That's kind of my reasoning for going rook f1, but I somehow missed it when it came about, because partly because this was the second game and I had a little crazy idea. I go here, you go back, I go back. Let's have a draw, because the way the league operates is 1.5 half counts the same as 2 love, so a draw would suit me fine. But unfortunately, after this move, he can run to here, which I hadn't really fully considered. And then I took the knight, which is fine. And I thought, yeah, a knight at c4 was not the ideal move. Again, I really should have just brought the bishop into the attack. Probably bishop to attack, and then knight at c4 apparently is strong. But I did knight to c4 first, and the point is the king is slightly safer on d2 than it would be on c3. Takes, knight at d6 check, takes, c3 check, and the idea is obviously we're opening up this diagonal as well with that move. Takes, knight c4 check. Okay, so I'm kind of attacking, but running out of material a bit. I've got a pawn and a knight in hand, pawn check. Clear away the that pawn which is threatening me. Knight g4, sort of defensive move. e3 check takes. Queen takes h2, perfectly reasonable move. So threatening maybe ideas here, but the king could still run. And suddenly I found, oh, my queen's looking a little bit trapped. So you were saying earlier, when your queen is just threatened, just sacrifice it, which is what I did, but it wasn't the best move. So I took, but I ran out of checks. I win the queen, but now suddenly white has got initiative. He has a check himself. So what should I have done apart from queen takes rook? So what I should have done was knight takes knight, because taking the queen would be a very big mistake, because then I can promote to knight with check, and I have enough pieces, it turned out, to mate. Just to see, you can't go this way apparently, because knight f5, so we're going to have the knight coming in here guarding this square. That knight guards off these two squares. This knight's already guarded, so he has to go to f4. But then we have knight d5 check. Well, we know we're getting a queen at least. The king can't run back. So he could go here, or he could go here, he could go here. But he's kind of a little bit cut off. If he ever goes here, knight here is coming in. So that's not going to look good for him. And he could go here or here, but then where? Then there, but then I've got a pawn and knight. Cut him off. But having said that, he's also got a rook defending, but then, yeah, pawn can take. Okay, so if he goes here, okay, I'm taking the queen with check, and that's going to be curtains for sure. So he has to go somewhere like so, but no, that's never going to be a good idea, because then these two knights, 3 apart like this, cut off a whole square. Notice, the knight cuts off a square like this, and this knight cuts off a square like this. So there are only 2 squares left for the king. And wherever you go, you're going to get mated. So if you go here, we got, well, actually f6 is good. King h5, g6 would be checkmate. Yeah, so whatever you do, it's going to be f6, king g4, knight f2 maybe, knight f2, king h5, g6 is checkmate. Yeah, and just to say, going the other way, you're losing a queen, so for sure that's going to be bad. But something more specific, you don't even need the queen. Something like this is checkmate. Or if king f4, queen at g3 apparently is checkmate. Just cutting off. Yeah. So you have so many pieces. Okay, so it turned out that taking the knight was the better move. And Pepaloo said, knight takes e3 reminds me of that knight h4 you showed me before. Yeah. It's not obvious that this is a threatening mate, but it's only like this one knight, but it is threatening mate. That's what you mean, yeah. So it turns out the best move against knight takes e3 is actually to take the knight. The knight is dangerous. And then queen takes g1 apparently is possible, but knight to e4 check, takes, knight here check, takes the queen. Yeah, I mean this is sort of a kind of sequence that might arise with black doing quite nicely. Hang on, so knight, I'm curious about knight takes knight, queen takes knight, and then takes the rook. That was surprising. The idea is if you take the queen, then we promote, I'm guessing. But no, that's not the idea at all. The idea is rook at e1, okay, blocks, and then just take the free queen. And yeah, the bishop is guarding, so we are safe. Okay, we do have knight checks to worry about a little bit. So yeah, it's a little bit worrying, but apparently... Okay, but what I played instead was queen takes, and like so, knight here check and takes the queen. The problem is, and in this position apparently he should have taken the rook, but he did a more scary move, which is he took my knight. And it turns out I have mate in this position, but I failed to find it. And it's either pawn at g3 or rook at h1 as mate. So the idea is something like rook at h1 allows me to promote, and that's why it's so dangerous. So the point is if you take the bishop, queen here is checkmate, so you have to run away. Why can't you run away like this? Because then the knight's coming in, and you're trapped in the corner. Queen here will be checkmate. So you have to run away, but it's going to be checkmate, and you can't run up, can you? Why can't we run away like this? Because then queen at f5 is checkmate. The bishop is actually stopping the king from running back, and the knight is stopping the king from running back. So this knight and bishop, yeah, really weird how they're controlling a lot of squares. Yeah, that was quite hard to see. Rook at h1. Rook at h1 and promote. That was really quite hard to see. And apparently there's another way of mating, even with pawn at g3. But rook takes g3, and then rook at h1, king h1, bishop, ignore that, go bishop here. Yeah, and the idea is now we're picking up the rook with check, I guess. Knight e2, check. So we better go king f2, because otherwise we're picking up the rook with check. But now queen at g1, king takes, bishop takes c4, we're picking up a knight. We could block that quite easily, but now we have a knight in hand, which is going to be interesting. Knight at c3, king d2, knight b1, and bishop here is checkmate, the diagonal mate. Wow, okay. So I completely missed all of that and played something much worse, which was I took back the knight. Very natural, he takes my knight, I take back. And now Jaego666 as white had mate in 4 against me. He played the right first move, takes. But he played the wrong continuation. So I'm going to just put this cover over the pieces. So white has got 3 pawns, 3 bishops and a queen in hand. And while you have a think about this, I'll just recap some of the things we've been discussing. So we discussed about be careful of open files, be careful of leaving your back rank exposed. If ever you're checked on a file or checked on a diagonal or checked on the back rank, almost always you want to block rather than run. Sometimes you want to run, but if you run, you have to watch out that all the squares are then going to be controlled by your opponent. We looked at smothered mates, the classic smothered mate idea, with a knight and a heavy, a rook or a queen is called a heavy. How that's even more dangerous if there's a bishop along the diagonal. To be always careful of those bishops along the diagonal. A bishop and a knight would mate king on g1 if the bishop controls the whole diagonal. We saw methods of mating such as distracting a defender, the magnet mate where you just nudge the king across to a square where it can be checked. How if we can take pieces with check, the power of that. We looked at knight and pawn mates, how actually a pawn defended by a knight with another knight can be a checkmate. We looked at queen and knight coordinating checkmate. We looked at blocking the king's escape route. That's a very important idea. Diagonal mates, as we just saw a second ago, two diagonals of opposite colours control the whole square. Queen invasions, king safety. When to be aware of king safety, sometimes when you think your king is not safe, but it actually is safe. To beware making holes in your position and how to exploit those holes, how to create weaknesses in the opponent's position by pushing pawns. Don't hang free pieces, watch out for pawn breaks, making the right pawn breaks, making exchanges when it suits you, defending with tempo, initiative, keeping initiative, not losing tempo. Sometimes an exchange loses the tempo if some queen ends up exposed in the center of the board and is hit. Pins, forks, just like in normal chess. Decision of when to take, when not to take, the correct pieces to block with, importance of developing pieces, just like in normal chess. And color complexes and sort of opening traps, watching out for weak squares, F7. So yeah, if you're interested in weak squares, do check out, I've got a video on my YouTube called Crazyhouse openings and weaknesses or something. So do check out my YouTube. Yeah, bishops are slightly stronger because they're long-range pieces and because they can attack as well as defend. Knights are terrifying because they can't be blocked. Okay, so what is the mate? Has anyone seen the mate? Juswald, anyone else? White to mate in this position, mate in 3, it turns out, with 3 pawns, 3 bishops and a queen. And there may be more than one solution. Has anyone seen it? And while you're looking, I'll just scroll through this. And I'll recommend my blog as well, with lots of stuff, where this is actually taken from. So can anyone see the mate here? Oops. So has anyone seen the mate? How many people have we got? We have 16 on Lichess. It's not completely obvious, and Jaeger666 did miss it because it's not completely obvious. So, any ideas? We've only got diagonal pieces. Where do we want to land our queen? Bishop at e3. The bishop at e3 looks good because when you take, we're winning the bishop, and then we're probably landing a queen on here, so I think that might be mating. Yeah, let's think. If bishop here, king here. Now the only problem with that, there's one problem with that, is what if the king runs to here and here? Bishop at e3, king here. say queen here, king here. Oh, queen takes bishop. Okay, but then block. Yeah, exactly. If I take the bishop, queen at e2, very nice. So bishop at here, but what if I just run? And my idea is to run over to a6. Yes, so Pepperlou's got it. You land the bishop at h5, you mean, but yeah, to stop the king running to g6, and now you've blocked off the king's escape route. Okay, so what's the follow-up? Suppose I block. So Nyangao says a5. Not sure what you mean. Yeah, bishop. Yeah, sorry, bishop a5. Yeah, sorry. We're getting all the notation mixed up. Yeah, so Pepperloo, it's black. So bishop a5, blocking on b6, b6, and so on. Yeah. Yeah, so bishop at a5, block on b6, then what's the follow-up? You said queen at e2. You mean queen at d7? Queen at d7? Yes. Yes, I understand you though. So bishop block, queen at e7, king here, and that's checkmate. Yeah, I think that's right. So let's have a look. So if I go bishop here, and I block, we could go here, check, king here, and c7 is checkmate. Something we could also block like this, but that doesn't make any difference. We could do the same checkmate, but with some slight variation, like so. Or if we were being sadistic, drop a pawn here and promote. Yeah. Okay, that's very nice. So it's very important to block off the king's escape. If we go straight away with bishop at d6, so apparently that still works. Bishop at c7, I was worried about king going to here, but queen a5 is checkmate, which I just completely hadn't noticed. So that also works, it turns out. Okay, so that was actually also pretty easy. Okay, but what actually happened in the game is queen landed straight away, and I ran, here check, and I ran, here check, and I took. a4, threatening mate in 1. Now, what he should have done in this position is sacrifice. And he has so many pieces, 4 bishops, 2 pawns, he has enough diagonals that wherever the king runs, he's got me. There are lots of variations, but there's no way of running away. So he actually needs to sack the queen, to really bite the bullet and sack his queen. By doing this, suddenly I have a mate. And I found the mate, which was knight at f1 check, stopping the king from running up, so the king has to run down. If the king runs to g1, that doesn't work, because I have knight at e2 check, takes, and here checkmate. If the king runs away, queen here is just checkmate straight away. So the king has to run down. And now I have a very pretty mate, a kind of smother the king mate. Takes, knight g3, and using my rook, checkmate. So unfortunately for Jaego, he didn't quite convert his mate. He had kind of 2 opportunities here with the block, and a few moves later he needed to go with the queen sack. He he didn't quite convert those two, and so I was lucky to mate him myself as black. So I think that game hopefully is lots of missed opportunities from both sides. Yeah, I mean, I missed an earlier diagonal mate, which I'd been kind of thinking of, but then didn't somehow convert it. Okay, so hopefully that's been instructive. Now let's look at, now let's actually do some practice. Okay, so it's going to be, so this was a game between OK as white and 5 knights as black. And yeah, thanks Pepaloo and Yang Gao. I'm just going to, I don't know, I think I've got 12 of these puzzles. Maybe I'll try them out against the computer, but not go too quickly. I mean, so this is clearly a back rank issue. So we want to clearly land on the back rank. King is trying to get away. We want to stop it from getting away. So we do the obvious thing here. And actually, this is I was mated like this in a rapid game just earlier this week. This would be checkmate in normal chess. This is not normal chess, so this isn't checkmate just yet. But we can take this, and this is checkmate. So that's the first of 12 puzzles. So that's the back rank issue. Okay, next. So this is going to be attacking the castle king. So in this position, this was OK against Colwem. Colwem was black. And Colwem has just taken the bait and taken my queen. That was a mistake, because now I have a mate. So, can we see the mate? There's actually a mate in 3, surprisingly. But there's an easier mate in 4, which is the one I played. And this actually, this kind of mate comes up a lot in this league, in my reviews of earlier seasons. So it's one to be really aware of. It's diagonals and knight. A knight on e7 controls not only g8 but also any future escape to g6. So after bishop takes pawn, king takes, queen here, king only has 1 square to go to, and this is checkmate. Now it turns out there was actually an even quicker mate in this position, which is using the fact that black has no knights in hand, only diagonals. So bishop at g7 is in fact mating directly. Now how is it mating directly? By going like this, and if the king goes up, queen here is checkmate, and if it goes back, queen here is checkmate. So that's the second of the 12 puzzles I want to share with you. Let's look at the third one. Now this was upgo a5 against Colwem, and Colwem as black found a very nice mate in this position, and it illustrates the theme of smothered mate, which I showed you earlier. So can we see the mate? So it doesn't look like there's a smother in the offing, because the king has got a lot of space around itself, and yet there is a smother. And I'm going to go a little bit quicker and show you. I'm sure you've seen it. Some of you will have seen it already, and this is the smother. Here check, and here using the fact that the g2 square is covered. Okay, so now let's look at the fourth puzzle. This is between high on hypotenuse as white and 0 as black. And the first thing you should notice about this position, this is weak light squares. The light squares around 0's king are extremely weak, and in fact he resigned once he saw the first move of the combination on the board. And so this is just a practice. So let's see. How are we going to finish this off? So almost anything will probably mate, but so how do we finish it off as cleanly as possible? So we could put a bishop here, queen here. Now the king seems to be running. I can see an eventual mate with bishop here and everything's controlled, but is there something faster? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking could we use the knight somehow? So if I go pawn here, king here, queen here, block, bishop there will be checkmate. So pawn here, king here, then what? Pawn here, king here, queen here. Again, I'm having the problem of the king running. So I'm not seeing the fastest mate here. Because the mate I'm seeing is I'm bringing this bishop in and just taking all the pieces. Which works, but okay, I'll see where bishop here, check, queen here, check. So my idea is bishop here takes. Is there something faster to mate in 2? Because that's a mate in 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is there something faster? I can't see it. So I'm going to ask for a hint. Oh, I have a bishop in hand. Okay, so bishop in hand just straight away gives checkmate. Okay, wonderful. So let's look at puzzle 5. And this is an illustration of the magnet mate technique, and 5 knights did wonderfully find this mate against high on hypotenuse. So knight here, check. Now, how is he going to finish it? If I go queen here, he's trying to run away, so it's not quite the same mate as the one. So I'm thinking queen here, check, king here, queen takes pawn, check, king here. So he's trying to run away. So maybe block off the exit. Was that correct? Yes, that was correct. Now what's the continuation? We've got a knight and a queen in hand. The knight is protected. Can we see a continuation? I've got no. How to continue it? Knight. I've got knight here, check, takes, queen here, but the king would just escape. So we've got the king in a kind of good position, but now how to finish it off? Could go queen here, block. No, I'm not seeing it. So the knight's we could go bishop here, takes. So knight and queen in hand, how to finish this? I'm thinking bishop here. That's my hunch at the moment. Knight at h5. Okay, so knight at h5, how about that? Pepelu says knight at h5, so it's true that he has to take that knight. And then I could move my queen in with check, block, queen there, checkmate. Okay, Pepelu, you got it. Oh, yeah, bishop takes, yeah, oops, yeah. I saw that before. Okay, so Nyangal says queen c3. Queen c3. Oh, queen c3, yeah. Queen c3 he just blocks with a pawn. I'm leaning towards bishop here. So bishop here, if he goes back, the bishop actually is actually doing a good job because it's going to cut the king off. So it's doing a good job. If he doesn't block, yeah, I think this will do it. If he doesn't block, if he goes back, we've got queen here, check, king here, and the knight will be mating. But I haven't calculated it properly. So let me calculate it properly. If bishop here and he goes back, then queen here, king here, queen here. Oh yeah, come on, this pawn is getting okay. So bishop here if he goes back, queen here, and queen takes pawn. Simple. Bishop here if he blocks or puts something in the way, takes, and then we bring the queen in. Now the queen is doing the blocking job. I'm pretty sure it's bishop here. Okay, so apparently bishop there was not the quickest. Takes, takes. Okay. Now, do we want to go? We've got bishop, bishop, queen, and takes will be enough. But if I go bishop, you could also go here. But then I can bring the queen in. He's just dying completely here. Okay, so, but there was a quicker way. And what was the quicker way? Let's get a hint. Wow. Knight here. What? I don't see. I still don't see. Really? You're going to sack all your pieces? Okay. Mate in 2. Can you see a mate in 2? Apparently there's mate in 2 here. Oh yeah, pawn here. Yeah, pawn here, and the bishop's covering off. The bishops actually cover off everything, so if he tries to run up, queen here is checkmate. Whoa. But if he runs back... Oh no, he can't run back. That's covered as well. Yeah, everything's covered. So he has to run here. Yeah, everything's covered. F6, he says. F6. F6. Yeah, F6 works. Yeah. And queen here is checkmate. Nice. Okay, so we didn't find the fastest mate first time round. That was good. Okay, let's do puzzle number 6. Oh, we've done this already. This is me torturing myself for getting it wrong. So let's see. So first block off, I guess. Or let me think. He's going to run back. So maybe knight here and queen here. Yeah, knight here first. And then queen here. And yeah, diagonals. Just on the previous one, by the way the game actually happened was slightly different, which was knight to h6. If I just take away the something like, how did it happen in the game? King g7, bishop at f6 takes. I'm trying to remember how it happened in the game. No, it's not in the Explorer. But I'm trying to remember how it happened. Because it was a slightly different variation in the game. Maybe was it king g7, bishop at f6, king takes f6. It was some kind of magnet mate, whereas this wasn't a magnet mate at all. So it was something more like that. But okay. Okay, we saw this already, but now we have to practice it. Okay. So that would be mate, but the knight can take it. Queen takes knight, takes back. Okay. Now we have to defend this knight and check, so we have to give a knight check from here or here. Which is better? So the advantage of here is it defends this one, I guess. But here also looks decent. But I'll go with here, just because it seems to defend one of my pieces, and it's pushing then this king back. Now, I think I want to use a bishop just to cut off this diagonal, and this square is already taken, so that will actually cut off the king a lot. So I feel that's right. Now we're going to use a pawn here or a bishop here. Bishop here, why not? Just cut off going here, but the problem is he's going to run here, but then he doesn't have anywhere else to go. So I'm going to go bishop here. He's got nowhere to go. Maybe a pawn here, because he can't run that way anyway, and pawn here. So very simple mate. Once you have the guts to sack your queen, it's a simple mate. I'm going to have to delete these answers actually once I'm done. Okay, puzzle 8. White to move. Oh, this is a difficult one. So Garden Plant didn't manage to seize this window of opportunity to turn around a previously lost game. So he was up against High on Hypotenuse, who was crushing this game, and he just had one chance in this position to turn it round. So we've got to look for checks. So rook here check, knight here check. Bishop checks don't look so good. So what should we do? We could do a rook check, but he can easily block with the rook. So, and we have a lot of bishops. So if knight here, we could put a bishop here. If knight here, bishop here. So knight feels like the right way to start, but we really have to get this right, because otherwise our own king is going to be in a bit of trouble. Maybe we can run away. Not there, but maybe we could run away. But it looks promising to do this, because if he takes this, rook here looks strong. So we're cutting off the king from the 7th rank. Now, having said that, we need to find a finish. So bishop here looks quite good, but we've only got 2 bishops. So we've got to. So bishop there will cut off this whole thing, and this will be. So bishop there is good. He'll be restrained to these squares. We can't really take the pawn, because then the pawn could be. We could take the pawn, but then king there, and then the rook is not defended anymore. There's a slight concern. So bishop there, king takes pawn. Maybe we then need to use our pawn. I hope this is right. I haven't calculated fully, but I'm just hoping that we can just use our pawns and bishops. But can we? So we can go pawn here. If king here, bishop here, and then bishop here will cut off as well. So is this is not the way to calculate, is it? But I want to go bishop here and bishop here, and I'm hoping that's enough. But what if bishop here, king here, then I use a pawn? Okay, this should be fine. Except not here, but here. Okay, so bishop here. And I want to go bishop here and say that's checkmate. But it's not, because then the king can come out. Oops. If king takes pawn, knight takes d4. Yeah, I also had knight takes d4. Maybe I missed that earlier. Eek. Yeah, knight takes d4 was probably neater, because that picks up an extra pawn. Now I want to go here, but then he's still got here. Yeah, so this is really not the way to calculate, is it? But what is... So bishop there, so bishop there, king there. How to finish it off? I go pawn here, king takes, queen in. Yeah, that'll do it. I mean, it's not the prettiest, but it'll do it. I mean, really not the prettiest at all. But once the queen is in the hunt, you're finished. Yeah, rook here. Now this is just terrible. Because I've just found a terribly long mate. So what is the simpler mate? Okay. So this is clearly not my strong point at all. So clearly knight takes pawn is good. That would have been slightly neater. We get an extra pawn. And what was the best move here? Okay, so we saw that already. After a5, what was the best move here? It was indeed bishop there. And what was the best move here? Ah, really? a5. Ooh, and discovered check. No. No, not discovered check. I'm going to have to just ask. Knight takes pawn, and then pawn here, checkmate. Okay. So the idea was all around this knight takes pawn being a key idea. Yeah. And then the variation I had... At this point, I couldn't see how do I get a mate in 4. So it's bishop here again, bishop here, king here. Really, the idea is just give up the bishop and get this knight in. Okay. Because once that knight's in, that actually covers the light squares very nicely. And yeah, interesting. So we go on to puzzle 9. Yeah, the reason the double check isn't strong is because the rook once it takes the pawn, is no longer protected. Okay, so puzzle 9 is creating weakness. So let's see. Yeah, this is a very nice one. Now, remember, always this knight to the castle king is very powerful because it controls a lot of the dark squares. Knight here check, threatening queen here checkmate if you don't take it. But now queen here is checkmate. King has no square to run back to. So it's creating a weakness on h3 to come in on. Free pieces. So what's the free piece in this position? 0 against high hypotenuse. 0 as white had a free piece he could have taken. Boom. Okay. So you win the free bishop. Well, that's the point of the puzzle. Next one, OK against Holloway. Holloway is black. Does it have this position where it's a kind of fork? Now, before we saw the example of knight at h4 and bishop at f3, there isn't that in this position. But what there is so, and in that last position, we couldn't take the bishop because it takes back, and the opponent would get a really powerful pawn on e5. But here, takes. When you take back, I can take this pawn, and this is actually quite good for. So knight h4, yeah. So it'd be interesting to see. Knight h4 isn't so good here. We have seen a very similar one, but if you just go knight h4 here, I think that's just not very good. See, +8. We win the queen, and what are you going to do with that knight? So before we had the ideas of bishop at f3. We don't have enough pieces, and I think last time we had a second knight or something. So here the best move, in fact, is just knight takes g2, but we haven't quite got enough for the queen. So it's quite different from the one we saw already. But the principle is the same, which is initiative. But there's a subtle difference, and the best move in this position is actually to take, takes, like so. Oh yeah, we had a rook in hand. We had other stuff in hand. Okay, and now let's look at the last puzzle I want to share with you, which is Colwen against Kostas VL. Ooh, turn on the. Yeah, that's correct. Ooh, this should say puzzle. Yeah, so I don't know why. It should be practice with the computer. Why is it doing this? It shouldn't have been giving you the answer. So, Colwen as white was against Kostas VL as black. It's the last illustration of the themes that I was trying to show you. Unfortunately, you saw the solution. Yep. There are two good moves in this position. See if you can find either. Bishop at f6 and bishop at h6. Indeed, Pepperloo. Very nice. You just got huge pressure on g7. Oh, that's rook at g3. What to do? Rook at g3 is actually scary. I'm guessing you just take it. I really don't know. Let's see. If I take the pawn, then he can't. If I take it, he goes knight takes queen, though. That's awkward. And he's got a queen in hand. At least he doesn't have a knight in hand, though. So, okay. What do you do now? Do I take the queen? Do I take the rook? Okay, but what's your bets on what we play now? Do we take the pawn? Do we take the queen? Do we take the rook? What do you think? It's going to be my final puzzle of the day, and I've got no idea. Because my thought is take the rook, but maybe I'm wrong. Driscoll says take the queen. Pepperloo says knight at h6 for the gallery. No, Pepperloo says I'll take the queen. That's true. I was thinking, yeah, because when he takes back, I was thinking bishop takes g7 and then take back. But yeah, he gets it with check. That's not so hot. Maybe bishop at h6 now. That's funny. Okay, I'm going to have a look. I was wrong. I was thinking take the rook, so it's obviously, yeah. Bishop takes g7 is the best. Bishop h6. Bishop takes queen is also good. And bishop h6 is third best. So just straight away takes, rook takes, and pin. Well, if he goes rook takes, that does make our life easier. If knight takes, then we can take the rook, or we just pin. And if he dares to take our queen, which of course is a threat, then we just take back. Okay. So yeah, rook at g3 is a confusing move. Because if we take the rook, suddenly he is winning. Knight takes g3, rook takes g3, queen takes g3. If you take the queen now, he has enough to mate you. So yeah, wow. I really need to improve my Crazyhouse. Pawn at g2, king here, and because my intuition was just completely wrong. Yeah, of course, because he's taking it with check. If it weren't with check, maybe there'd be some kind of hope. But yeah, so black is actually mating. Okay, so that's it. This has been a review of the Crazyhouse 10+10 League. The next season will be starting next week and will be a team league. I'll get in touch with you, Pepperloo, and anyone else who is interested. But it will be organised over the Lichess Slack, so it has to be according to their rules, and we're struggling to set up stuff within their domain, like having the bot working, because they have their own bot working there. And they don't. We need someone to. We need Fishy Vishy to be vetting people to join the Slack, because the mods at the moment don't want to do that vetting work. So where can you find the Slack? I'll send you the link where you can register, and then we need Fishy Vishy to send you an invitation to the Slack. But he's been offline for about a week, so yeah. But then the other way to get involved in the Slack is to join the Lichess 4545 Lone Wolf, but don't tell them you're joining for Crazyhouse, because they don't want to have to vet you for Crazyhouse. But that's the secret. That's the way to get in. Is you say you want to play classical chess, 45+45 or Lone Wolf, and then you'll be in. But I'm not allowed to tell you that. Okay. So there will be a Crazyhouse way of going through, yeah. If you're interested, message me on Lichess and I'll send you the link, and there will be a Crazyhouse way of getting into the Slack. And Pepperloo, of course, he is a chess player, so he is interested in classical, so that's cool. Okay, so hopefully this has been a fun stream. We've seen some themes illustrated, and we've seen just some puzzles, putting them into practice. Okay, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks Juswald and Pepperloo and Yangal and everyone else for joining in the Twitch chat and making it fun. And thanks also to everyone who will be watching later on YouTube. Do check out my YouTube. I'll just post the link. Okay, thanks everyone, and goodbye.